Hey, good morning, everyone. It is our Tuesday morning devotion for April 20th. This is Pastor Scott here. And today I thought we would talk a little bit about generosity and think about that during this week as Christians. Let me put it in this framework. Our culture encourages us to absorb the latest and the greatest, and then cast off what was the latest and the greatest last year. We're targeted these days to accumulate, to consume. The new feature we learned about yesterday is now the one we can't live without today. 2 Corinthians 9 can be taken in some ways, I guess, to appeal to that sort of consumer lifestyle. It's definitely switched for that and used for wrong purposes. 2 Corinthians 9:6, Paul says, "The one who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. The one who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully." Well, that verse can be used to encourage giving, but out of a wrong motive, because some will say, well, then obviously God will provide us with even more stuff if we are giving people. But that's not what it's about. Verse 7, when you continue the thought that Paul says, is each one should give as he's decided in his heart, not reluctantly or from compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Well, God provides for those who are giving. He takes care of those who follow him, but the willingness to give is not out of compulsion, not of obligation, or not in order to receive more. Selfish giving produces just one thing: selfishness. It's not about the love and mercy that God desires. You see, we have to take this back to who God is, because we're called to be like him and have his attributes. And one of those attributes is that God is obviously incredibly generous. He's a giving God. He gives in abundance. He loves to give. He sacrificed willingly on the cross and invited us into the fullness of life found through Christ. As his children, as his adopted children through Christ, we're called to imitate him. And that generosity in giving is a demonstration then of God's character. It's a response for what he has done for us. We're the light of the world as Christians. And as we become more and more the people who God has called us to be, well then, sanctification means we reflect God more and more. We become more loving, more gracious, more giving. Why? Because God is like that, and we're called to be generous. And generosity points others to God when it's done appropriately. One of the things that you'll hear in our society today as well is this phrase, "To whom much has been given, much more will be expected." And that's pretty common phrase. Its biblical roots are in Luke chapter 12. Because we have been so freely loved, we now love others. Because we have been forgiven, we forgive others. Our response to God's abundance with us is to share that abundance with others. When we appropriately receive God's generosity, it humbles us, and then we appropriately become giving to others. Why? Well, we recognize that we're not worthy of his gift. And then out of gratefulness, we become more gracious with others in a way that points people to Christ. We begin to learn the heart of God, and we want to be more like him. One of the other things, as I want to close this here in just a second, is that this demonstrates God's character to the world. But then it also increases faith for us. When we are willing to give, we declare that our faith does not depend on material possessions. Instead, what it does is that it shows that our faith is in God. And he is always faithful to provide in a way that helps us to be more giving to others, to reflect his glory, to reflect his character to others. So we're called to be gracious people, and I pray that this week you will consider what God has called you to do to be a more gracious person. Alrighty? Hope you have a great week. Hope to see you Thursday night with our Bible study on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock, and hope to see you this next Sunday at 10:30 at our worship service. Talk to you later. God bless.